Hello and welcome to another segment of OTH Sports View. My name is JP Butler. I'm joined by my colleagues Shawn Campbell and Jeff Madigan. It's been actually about a month since we last did an episode, and plenty has happened with all three of the teams that the three of us have covered this winter season. St. Bonaventure men's basketball team, the Olean High boys and girls teams by Shawn Campbell, and the St. Bonaventure women's team by Jeff Madigan. And so we just wanted to get into a little bit of what has happened, especially in the last couple of weeks here. Certainly nothing short of excitement.
Well,
certainly
our
eventful.
two teams, it was exciting.
Well,
For you,
even with it not going the way they wanted, it was still certainly an interesting time. And so we'll get into that. The Olean High boys basketball team brings home their second state championship. The previous one in 2008. This year under Jeff Anastasia, they get to the Federation tournament. They win a game in the Federation tournament, which is the first time that they've ever done that. Shawn, what can you just kind of tell us about the last couple of weeks of the Olean High season, everything that you saw, and what they were able to accomplish in a pretty remarkable season under Jeff Anastasia?
Well, they really achieved their dream in Glens Falls, won that state public school title, and then Anastasia inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame the next day. And that was really what they had been talking about since really day one when the season began, and they just did that. That was a huge moment for them. They were thrilled.
Oh, at what point, obviously, the Olean High boys have been a juggernaut for quite a while, and so every year they seem to maybe be in a position where they could make kind of a run like this. When did it look to you like this team was capable of actually bringing home a state title? What point did it look like, this is a team that can do this, that can go on this kind of run, that's good enough to do that this year?
Well, I mean, you saw all along that they were really good, winning by a lot, but sometimes it's hard to tell exactly just what that's going to mean when they're winning regular season games by like 29 points a game. Right. What's that going to translate to? I guess for me, I mean, once they got past Fredonia a third time in beating them in the playoffs, that was big. And then they get to Glens Falls and they win the first semifinal game 58-38 against a team that had been scoring 80 points a game, Hudson.
Right.
So that was, I mean, once you saw that, it kind of really showed that these guys are really good and their defense can be really good on the big stage too.
Right. And I mean, you kind of mentioned it right there, but I mean, you were there every step of the way with these guys. You saw every game. What just kind of stood out to you along the way of what they were able to do? What was maybe surprising or dramatic that kind of stood out along the way?
One thing would be just this team was really balanced. I mean, you could have predicting who was going to be the leading scorer on any given night would be a little hard to do, I would say. I mean, in the state championship game, Derek Schmidt wins state tournament MVP, scores 20 points. A guy who's not really a big scorer has his best scoring game of the year. And I don't think anybody was really expecting to see that when guys like Elijah Ramadan and Ben Ekstrom, sometimes Jake Cavana, Monty Shoemaker were the kind of bigger offensive guys, but just you never really knew. And they played just so well together. And I don't think they really cared about who was leading the way scoring-wise.
Right. Now you saw what it was like, what the atmosphere, what the feeling was like when they won the state championship 2 weeks ago. I'm assuming just euphoria. Then they come back in the Federation tournament, and what is that? What kind of sense? That's one thing that I was kind of wondering. What sense you get from that? Is this something that, since they already have the state title, is it something that they're really that affects them? They won the game on Saturday, but then they lost the championship on Sunday. Was that something that bothered them, or was it already, hey, they won? Yeah. They brought home a state title. That was the main goal. This is just extra.
Yeah,
basically.
You could look at it like it was kind of gravy, but I mean, just it was kind of a depressing atmosphere, just with playing in front of like a couple hundred people when the weekend before you're playing in front of thousands.
Right.
And I mean, the one thing that was different for them, I think, was they had a chance to finish this perfect season, go 29-0. That was really the big goal. I think winning the Federation would have been nice, but even the bigger thing was the chance to 29-0.
Right.
And they come within 5 points of
That's a
doing
good
that.
point. That would have been something that would have really, really stood out and really taken its place in history. I think
Yeah.
if they were, not
I mean,
that they didn't.
Jeff Anastasia talked about, no future Olean High team could ever top that. They would be the best all time, no debate, no chances for any team to do better. And really, since the Federation tournament started in 1979, only 3 teams in state history have gone 29-0 and won a Fed title. So
Right.
they could have been in some
So
really
they-
elite company there.
And they were just on the cusp of it, which is
Yeah.
still pretty remarkable. So great season for the Olean High boys. The Olean High girls also brought home a sectional title. Great season for the St. Bonaventure women's team. It was a year, all year long, it was shaping up to be a good season. And then at the end, there were a couple of losses there. They had the loss in their first game of the A10 tournament, where it really brought into question their NCAA chances. But they get in a night after the men were left out.
Yep.
Jeff, from that point on, what was it like being around the team? What can you tell us from what they accomplished down the stretch there?
All season long, it was a great experience. If they had been in the NIT, they could still be playing, but it's getting to the NCAA tournament was one of their dreams, one of their goals all season, and they got there. And they didn't really take the easy route to get there, but they got there. And when they got there, all the way to Oregon, 2,500-mile plane ride, and they thought, man, we'll make this as long as we can. And they won their first game, and they didn't win the second game, but they probably weren't gonna. That's as far as they were gonna go.
Right.
Trying to beat Oregon State at Oregon State would have taken a monumental effort, and
Sure.
they didn't have that. They didn't play as well as they could have, and they lost. But still a hell of a season, 24-8 overall, and an NCAA tournament berth that in the month of February was certainly a question mark, depending on who you ask, of
And
course.
going back to that point, just in your writing, I think we know where you stood on the matter, but when it was a question of whether they would be in or not, you certainly thought they were deserving, and the committee ultimately did as well. What do you think it was that got them in, and what was it like seeing the reaction?
Well, why they got in is my great writing in the month of February and early March is why they got in. I'm almost positive of that. No, there two things got them in. I think it was the number of top 25 wins they had, which was 2, and they beat Duquesne and George Washington. And then overall, they beat 3 conference tournament champions, one being George Washington, the other James Madison, and the third, which came out of nowhere, was UB when
Right.
Buffalo won the MAC.
Right.
The committee looked at that, and the committee valued this committee. I don't know what the men's committee did, but this committee valued good wins and probably overvalued good wins and devalued bad losses, because the women had 2 of those, maybe 3 if you count the quarterfinal loss in the Atlantic 10 tournament as well. But the 2 good wins in February against George Washington and Duquesne, both at the Riley Center, 2 top 25 wins. That's why they got in the tournament.
And obviously you were there with them.
I did. I got
From
to travel.
the whole trip out, 2,600
That's
miles. I
a
think
long
that was
way.
one of the furthest teams in either side had to go for their game. What can you tell us about that experience for them? What you saw, and obviously they didn't just think of it as, hey, we're just happy to be here, because
No,
they
it wasn't
won.
a
They
vacation.
won the first game
Yep.
that they played, and they actually, after the first couple of minutes of that first game, they were pretty convincing.
Mhm.
The rest of the way, they were
Yeah.
really in control. The rest
Yeah,
of
they
the
were
way that
down.
game.
They were down 12-5 at the media timeout in the first
Right.
quarter. After that, it was. They outscored Oklahoma State by 18 or whatever it was, because they won by 11. And it was a great atmosphere. I think Sunday's atmosphere was better because there were more people there. There were 6,000 people there on Sunday. Now a lot of those people were cheering for Oregon State because they were the home team.
Right.
But they did have a good bonding contingent of about 50 people. A lot of the parents showed up, most of whom I met and talked to briefly. But yeah, they didn't go there. That wasn't a vacation.
Right.
They were there to work, and they definitely worked in both games, even in the 29-point loss on Sunday in the second round. They never gave up. They were, you could see as we all walked into the Gill Coliseum at Oregon State Thursday or Friday, I forget which. Yeah, Thursday for opening practice and the press conference. You could see him just looking around, because the Riley Center is great, but it's not the Gill Coliseum at Oregon State. It was just the electric atmosphere the whole time, and thinking that I'm sitting right behind the ESPN commentators trying to sneak my way onto TV, which I guess I did for the second game. But as Sue Bird was talking and discussing the loss, but it's just the whole thing. I'm sure it was the first time any of the girls were on ESPN, and the whole atmosphere, and it's indescribable almost, and it's something that I'm going to be able to take with me for the rest of my life. But it doesn't matter what I think; it's what they get to take with them the rest of their lives.
Right. Now, real quick though, because you were with them,
Yeah.
every step of the way out there, you were gone from Wednesday, I think, to Monday.
Wednesday to left on Monday, and
That's
flew back on
that's
Monday.
quite a trip to make. Anything that stood out? Any kind of story you can share?
Well,
From,
my bank
from your
account
trip
is a
there?
little less now, and I lived on free continental breakfast and hotel coffee. Anything, I mean, just the whole atmosphere, and all the girls were just soaking it in the whole time.
Right.
And whether they were starters and played 38 minutes a game, or they didn't, they played 2 minutes a game.
Right.
It was everybody. It was just a team atmosphere, and all the coaches and all the hoopla that went around with it. I mean, you're in the NCAA tournament. I mean, it's something that may not happen again for this team. You hope maybe. I guess they're doing the 4-year plan. Well, maybe we'll be back in 4 years, but it's
a place like this.
And then that team back in 2012, it was just a culmination of everything coming together. And then by the end of the season, same thing here in 2016, just everything coming together and them playing, and then beating the teams they needed to beat late. And here we go.
And everything you went through was all in the name of great coverage.
Yeah.
For the Times Herald, you did a great job with that. You ended up making a trip at the end of the year. I thought that's what I would be doing. Certainly the Sunday of Selection Sunday, I woke up thinking that I'm going to be writing the They're Going dancing story, and that I would have a trip to be planning for at the end of the week. And then obviously that doesn't happen. And one of the toughest days, I think, of the Schmidt era, certainly to this point, was that Selection Sunday where you thought they were probably still going to be in, despite the fact that they had lost to Davidson in their first game of the A-10 tournament. I know people were looking at that as, if you win this game, that probably seals it. Mm-hmm. But even the next day and into Sunday, I spent most of that time. I went to the semifinal games, and then I just kind of was stayed an extra day until I got back on Sunday. But the entire time, I'm looking to see what people are still saying, and the experts are all still basically saying it looks like they're probably still going to be in comfortably as of Sunday morning. The CBS bracket that Jerry Palm had them in the 8-9 game. And so you think, okay, well, they've got to be in, because there's a huge gap between the 8-9 game and being left out entirely. Right. But sure enough, that's what happens. And I think what made it worse for them is that this is the first year that I can ever remember a situation where you have the leaked bracket and everybody's kind of finding out at one point or another throughout the show, which is obviously taking forever anyway. And everybody's on Twitter, and the players are on Twitter, and they can see what's happening here. And
we all saw it.
So
I'm sure we all saw
the
it.
fact that they had to find out that way, I think that was really difficult for them, because right then and there it was just taken away from them. There wasn't even waiting for the second half of the bracket.
Just imagine their looks on their faces
as they saw that. I remember being in there and think somebody, and we watched it in the media room, and somebody spots this leaked bracket, and the first half of the bracket is spot on, and I remember thinking, okay, they're about to start the other side of the bracket.
The North Carolina
that first
region,
game is that North Carolina Florida Gulf Coast the playing game. Then we know we probably have our answer here. So that's what happens, and obviously the next couple of days, just a nightmare ending to what was really a storybook season before that. To that point, 14-4 in conference, most conference victories in program history. They won that game at St. Louis to get a share of the regular season conference title. First time they've done that in history. First time 20 regular season wins since 1977. So there was so much excitement down the stretch. The buzzer beater game, the overtime game at Fordham, Posley's 47-point game against St. Joe's in Rochester to really give themselves a chance to make it.
St. Joe's was a couple baskets away from beating
Yeah,
Oregon.
yeah. I think that was a winnable
Yeah.
that was a winnable game against the number 1 seed, because I think they were a little bit
And I was in Oregon when that happened, so that was really
overseeded. I think Oregon
Yeah.
was, and so St. Joe's had a chance there. But just a tough last couple of days. They go from sort of being an historical snub. They're the first team with the top 30 RPI and a regular season conference title to be left out of the tournament. First time ever that's happened. And so that was tough. And then you wondered if they would be up for the NIT game or not. I personally thought they would be, given that they had a chance to play more basketball,
They were
that they had a
6 minutes in the
chance
second half.
to maybe win, that they get to Madison Square Garden if they'd really embraced it, and that they would want to send the message that, hey, you can't get to us. We're gonna, we want to send a message here. Obviously, that's not what happened. They came out flat. Wagner played well too. It's not like, that team. I don't know. Creighton then beats Wagner in the next game by 33, but that team came in and played, and that was one of the few teams I've seen that came in and responded to how loud. That was one of the best crowds of the year, and that team did not let it get to them, which is surprising. And Bona just waited a little bit too long to get going. It was a little too late at that point. So a nightmare end to the season. It's bringing about a lot of question marks. I think certainly the way the season went, how good it was, and how much attention it brought to them, but also maybe how it ended has brought a lot of attention to what might happen here. They lose Marcus Posley and Deion Wright, which are going to be big losses, but they've got a nice core back if it holds, and the 3 guys who sat on the bench this year, David Ando, Matt Mobley, and Courtney Stockard, that they're very high on, could have been starter types this year. And so if that holds, the prospects could be good. Maybe they don't miss a beat. I don't know about that, but they could be very good again next year. But there's going to be all sorts of speculation with what happens with Coach Mark Schmidt. Is he going to entertain the idea of leaving this offseason? There have been rumors swirling around point guard Jalen Adams, who's a first-team All-Conference member. If he's going to look to maybe transfer or not. I've heard both things on both sides of that. So it's going to be an interesting couple of weeks for the St. Bonaventure men's basketball team. It was a great year just in general for the basketball teams in this area. And so we certainly wanted to touch on that. And then going forward here, we'll get into some of the spring high school stuff, maybe a little St. Bonaventure baseball and softball. And we will be back much sooner than the last time we saw you. Thank you very much.